Hi, my name is Hunter Smith. I am the Director of Communications at Work Wisdom, and I'm here today with our wonderful associate, Liz Orr. Thank you so much for being here today, Liz.
I'm delighted to be here, Hunter.
Awesome. Well, let's start us off with the first question. What drew you to Work Wisdom, and how does it align with your professional values?
Yeah. Well, Work of Wisdom is such a special firm. They I'm really in awe of the way that Work Wisdom's values are its guiding light in the work that it does. Um, and the creation of a better world based on principles around justice and equity. Um, I mean that is I wish all of my work could align that well. But those are my values. Those are deeply held values of mine, and so it was such a no-brainer to partner with Work Wisdom and to join in their work to create a better world through people, and to really fight um, the kind of awful isms in the world through their work. So that's what is so special about this place and why I'm so delighted to work alongside and with Work Wisdom.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Now, you are a subject matter expert, Liz, when it comes to the Enneagram. How did you get started down that path, and what keeps you so interested in the Enneagram today?
Yeah, I will admit I try to wriggle away from the term expert just because there are many people who have far more knowledge than I do, and I see myself as more of the like class clown among the cohort. But with that said, I think there is wisdom and expertise and humor. And I was introduced to the Enneagram right out of college. I was living and working with the same people, and the director of that nonprofit knew that like working and living with the same group of people is a good recipe for murder. So she was like, I'm going to bring in someone to talk about the Enneagram to offer this tool for this little group of folks together and to hopefully better understand themselves and understand one another a little bit better and with more compassion. And so that was my first introduction. I was 22 years old. I didn't know myself at all.
Mhm.
And so I mistyped, but at the same time, just like listening to that that talk, listening to our teacher talk about the Enneagram was so um profound. It just felt like I was kind of being read for filth, and in a really powerful way. And so that really captured me kind of early on. And then I went on a few years after that, after grad school, to work with college students primarily. And I remember just thinking like, man, I really wish I had had a tool like that in college. That could have been really powerful and really empowering. And so I just started kind of talking about the Enneagram, heavily relying on books. I didn't have enough expertise at that moment. I couldn't just kind of spout off about it like I can now. But over maybe about 5 years early into my career, working with college students, I would, introduce them to it, and with my leadership teams, we would talk about it. Um, and then I had a graduate student who was in a class about the Enneagram, and we would have weekly one-on-ones, and inevitably, week after week, the Enneagram would come up. And so I got a little more familiarity through her, and then I started reading a few more books. And it was the summer of 2018 that I realized I also like love things like astrology,
Mhm.
although not nearly as well versed. And there were all these like funny Instagram accounts about astrology, but there's nothing about the Enneagram. And I was like, well, it would be really nice if there were something lighthearted about the Enneagram. And so I just started Rude Ass Enneagram on Instagram and just started making fun of all of the different types. And that kind of took off to my surprise.
Yeah.
And people wanted me to say more things about the Enneagram, to speak about the Enneagram, and started sort of regarding me as this expert. And I was like, whoop, let me go make sure I get some training.
Yeah.
Well, I went through about probably close to 200 training hours as a practitioner. Um, and through that got to just hear so much about all the different types from many, many different people. And I think that really was the most like powerful education in the Enneagram, was listening to people talk
Hmm.
about their own experience about the Enneagram. So that and continued reading. And yeah, and then in 20, well, it's actually almost a year old. I released a book in April of 2024 about the Enneagram and about using it with a sense of humor in the work of self-compassion and compassion for others. And here I am today. And
Yeah.
actually, I will say, throughout that, probably the last 5 years since 2018, um, Work Wisdom has been a friend and has championed me and my silly work. And um, so that's, we kind of connected through that, which was really cool.
So, Liz, you mentioned the book that you published titled The Unfiltered Enneagram, which is absolutely dynamite, incredibly insightful, and absolutely hilarious. But what actually inspired you to write this book on the Enneagram with your own perspective?
Thank you for such kind words about the book. Um, there are a lot of really brilliant books out there about the Enneagram. Really, really thorough, well written. And um, sometimes in the work of self-awareness, we can take ourselves a little too seriously. And it can be really confronting.
Mhm.
The work of the Enneagram can be really challenging to look at, and it can kind of very easily send us into a shame spiral. And so I firmly believe that having a sense of humor about ourselves can be a really powerful tool in our work to love ourselves, and to be compassionate towards ourselves. And of course, humor can be a maladaptive coping mechanism as well, and a way to avoid things. But I just think that it's so important to kind of um, equip what we're doing, what the hard questions we have to ask ourselves with a little bit of levity in
Mhm.
order to, I think that takes the sting
Yeah.
out of some of the really painful and sometimes mortifying patterns that we start to uncover of our own. And it gives us a little more courage to look at the things that we want to change about ourselves. And that empowers us. So it was really important to me to create something that to use humor as another like doorway
Yeah.
into what I believe is really important work around self-compassion.
Absolutely. Yeah. Laughter is the best medicine for
Mhm.
sure.
It is. It is.
So, Liz, you have been wonderfully facilitating Work Wisdom's Enneagram circles so far this year. What would you say is the most rewarding part of your work with Enneagrams and with these circles?
Oh gosh. That's a hard question because it's also rewarding,
Yeah.
really and truly. I come out of those circles feeling like I've received so much more. Um, I think the most rewarding part, um, from a corporate perspective, I hope that it helps people not feel so alone. When we're, and even, we haven't gotten to my type yet, type 8, in our circles, but even just listening to the other types and hearing other people um, bemoaning the same suffering that I also experience. And I hope that that's true for the folks who are in those circles. And then very selfishly rewarding. It's I just learned so much more about each type when I hear people talk about their experience of
Yeah.
their type. So it's just like the best seminar for me to continue to deepen my own knowledge about the Enneagram.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that it can sometimes be a little bit difficult when you have to look inward and do this sort of introspection, I think that sometimes the Enneagram requires you to do. So, what would you say is a common obstacle people face when diving into the Enneagram, and how do you try to address that in your work?
Hmm. Um, I think it can be something I commonly see is when you first start to peel back those layers and look under the rug, you start to see how much you've been getting in your own way and
Hmm.
maybe how much you've been contributing to your own suffering or the suffering of the people that you love, right? Like
Yeah.
that you're not always the hero. In every one of your stories. And so I think it can feel really overwhelming. Like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I have to do a major overhaul of everything in my life. And I don't think that's true. I don't think it's possible. Number one, I don't actually think that we can sort of upend everything um,
Mhm.
and give up every defensive pattern we've ever employed. I think trusting and releasing the expectation that we have to fix it all in one go
Yeah.
and trusting that as we continue to strengthen the muscles of self-awareness and self-compassion, the places that need the most healing, the most overhaul, will present themselves as they're ready. And this is lifelong work. This is a
Mhm.
marathon, not a sprint. So
Yeah.
um, I think that's a really important reminder. And I also, the other thing I'll say, and I say this often, is sometimes we can really get locked in the Enneagram to talking about like healthy versus unhealthy.
Mhm.
And I understand why we do that. We want to be healthy, right? Like that's a desire for all of us. We want to be emotionally healthy, and I think that there are sort of two spectrums of emotional health to be aware of. There is this sort of long trajectory of our life of emotional health that we do kind of move along throughout the course of our life as we learn more self-regulation skills and learn how to be patient and interrogate our own narratives. I also think there's a much smaller scale that we slide up and down all day in like how emotionally healthy I am. And something as simple as like, running late and not getting a parking space can really send me to the
Yeah.
unhealthy side of that little spectrum.
Yeah.
And so just like giving ourselves the grace that we're not going to do everything perfectly every time. And that doesn't actually mean that that larger scale of being emotionally healthy is so out of whack when the little scale is sort of bouncing around. So I just like to put those two things into perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. That's spot on. So, how would you say your background and your experiences shape the way that you approach Enneagram coaching and roundtables?
So for the last decade, I've worked in chaplaincy in higher education, so religious and spiritual life with young emerging adults, but also with my colleagues
Mhm.
and my peers. And now I'm actually working in personal and professional development coaching with medical students. And again, I think in the world of self-awareness and personal professional development, and certainly in the realm of religious identity and spirituality, again, we can take ourselves a little too seriously and like
Yeah.
lose um, the levity, lose the irreverence, and lose compassion for ourselves. We can really kind of beat ourselves up for the places that we got it wrong. And so the way that I try to approach facilitation and coaching is really reminding people almost ad nauseum around like, you were doing your best. And yeah, our best is different day to day. My best yesterday might not be as great as I would really hope it would be, but it was my best. And to give ourselves that patience and understanding. And the reality is that less than preferable best got me to where I am today, where I can reflect on it and perhaps do better.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to me to remind people of that and to trust and believe that people often have the wisdom and the answers that they are looking for.
Hmm.
I I don't have some secret knowledge that nobody else does or some secret wisdom. We all have incredible capacity to answer our own questions. Sometimes we just need a mirror. And so I
Hmm.
really try to just ask good questions, reframe things from a different perspective, but in a way that allows folks to contact their own wisdom, and trust people to know how to resolve their own conflicts.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You don't have the answers yourself, but you can help guide people
Yeah,
towards the answers within themselves.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, Liz, why do you think it is so important for people to not only just know their Enneagram type, but to really truly understand what all that entails?
Hmm. I think it's important, because I think that the way that I like to talk about the Enneagram is that it is our survival strategy.
Mm,
It's the way that we have protected ourselves in the world as we perceive it. And it explains the why behind our behavior more so than just our behavioral patterns. And so it allows us, when we really know our type, when we really understand what is motivating us, it allows us to reality check. And we know what to look out for in the moment. I know as a type 8, when I start to get defensive, I know that I'm going to start to deny that I need other people or that I need rest or that I need to be careful.
mhm.
Uh, and so I can look out for these kind of behavioral patterns of my own, and then I can start to ask, okay, what do I think I'm protecting within myself? What am I afraid will happen if I'm not in control of this situation? It holds a mirror up to us that then gives us a lot more freedom in our choices because we understand what's going on within us. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any aspect about the Enneagram that you wish more people were aware of?
Hmm. I wish that sometimes we can take it so prescriptively and we can be
Mhm.
really rigid in how we understand the Enneagram.
Mhm.
And I just wish people knew like it's actually a very fluid system. It's very practical. It does have sort of a formulaic way of being in the world, but it also has a very fluid kind of ebbing and flowing way of being. And I think that that's really um powerful and again like freeing, right? We're not our type. Our type is our survival strategy, but we have a lot of agency out of just that default position.
Yeah, that is so true. And then lastly, on a lighter note, Liz, what are your three favorite movies and why?
Hmm. So I'll start with a serious answer. And then we'll devolve quickly from there. My favorite movie, I have to give it to The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, classic.
I watched it over and over and over again as a child, to the point where I had like a very public meltdown in a ballet class when I was about 3 years old because I was not cast as Glinda or Dorothy.
Oh my gosh, no.
The dance instructor had to be like she was. I have a visceral like memory of her sort of explaining why me as a 3 year old could not be the prima ballerina,
Three.
but it was devastating to me at the
Oh,
time.
oh,
So Wizard of Oz for sure
okay.
is at the top of the list. Um, there is another movie that I love. That it's called Everything is Illuminated.
Mm,
It is, it kind of came out of the like peak early aughts twee Garden State era, of these sort of like indies, but it shares, or the cast is Elijah Wood,
okay.
uh, as this kind of young man who travels to Eastern Europe to find, I think, the village that his parents and his grandparents are from, and it also stars um, this punk rock singer named Eugene Hutz, who actually has a band called Gogol Bordello. Uh,
Oh,
if you listen to them, they are a punk rock band that sings in English with this incredibly thick Eastern European accent. It
oh
is
wow.
just delightful. It's so
Yeah.
good. And I loved them in high school. And
Uh,
uh, the lead singer is in this movie, and it's both very profound. The movie is very profound, but there are these great moments of levity throughout it, and it is also visually stunning. The
mm,
cinematography is
oh,
just beautiful.
yeah.
And then I love bad movies. They're like my favorite genre of movie. So bronze medal has to go to Snakes on a Plane.
Okay.
Uh, it's a terror. Have you seen it? It's so
I
bad.
haven't seen Snakes on the Plate.
It's so bad. It's ridiculous, but it's just in how bad it is
Yeah.
glory.
Yeah.
It's you have the whole plot of the movie in the
Mhm.
title. There are snakes on a plane.
It's Snakes on the
And
Plane.
Samuel L. Jackson
Oh
saves
wow.
the plane
Oh
from these.
wow.
But I mean, I'm pretty sure I went to see it like at midnight with my friends in the theater when it came out. It was so dumb, but I love dumb movies so much. So
Yeah.
that's up there for me.
Okay, three amazing choices. I definitely need to check out the last two, especially Snakes on a Plane. That sounds
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yep. It's get some friends together and watch that
Yeah.
one and just it's outrageous, it's ridiculous, and it is delightful.
Amazing. I'll have a Snakes on a Plane watch party at my apartment. Telling everybody, telling the neighborhood.
Perfect. Perfect.
So, Liz is facilitating our Enneagram circles at Work Wisdom this year, and we have an upcoming Enneagram circle on Monday, April 14th at 12 p.m. for our Enneagram Type 4s. Anybody's welcome to join, but especially if you're a Type 4, this one is all about you. You can get tickets on Eventbrite. We'll have links in our caption and in our story if you're on Instagram. So go over to Eventbrite, get your tickets for that Enneagram Circle. And you can go to our website to see future Enneagram Circle events as well throughout the rest of the year. Well, Liz, thank you so much for your time today. I so appreciate it.
Thank you for being flexible and a wonderful facilitator of these meet the staff folks.
Absolutely. It was such a pleasure getting to talk with you today, and I can't wait to talk with you again soon.
Sounds great. Take care, Hunter.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. See ya.
Bye.